You're listening to Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Leia. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show.
Let's see, Cattywampus had a Tishomingo Wildlife Refuge in Broken Bow, Oklahoma.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to talk real fast because my device's battery's going down on it.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I've been an avid hunter all my life. My father was too. We always ran dogs and show beagle dogs and hound dogs. Okay, my son and I was down there fishing at Tishomingo Wildlife Refuge about 4 years ago, right on the river part. We were sitting down there with lawn chairs. It was right at dusk. Something else that I noticed, we didn't hear no coyotes or nothing. Usually hear them in that area about that time. Next thing I know, I hear a loud, it was like somebody breaking trees. It's the only way I can describe it. It sounded like a bulldozer fell out of the sky and it literally was breaking trees. And I know the difference of walking on twigs, and I know a difference between breaking trees. And it was breaking trees. And then the next thing I heard was this loud growl, and it was so deep and so penetrating, and it felt like it broke the sound barrier. And the next thing I know, I grabbed my lawn chair, told my son that we're out of here because I was go. Me and my son, we never believed in Bigfoot. Neither did my father. My father's been gone now for 8 years, hunted all of his life. We still did not believe in it. I got in the vehicle with my son. I literally looked up mountain lions. We know the difference on mountain lions. They sound like a woman screaming. We know those sounds. We've hog hunted all of our life, so we know big hogs. That sounded, the only thing I could say that it sounded like a bear, but it wasn't a bear. And I didn't see it. But whatever it was, I knew I was smart enough to leave. Well, about a year later, we're back down there on that boat ramp at Tishomingo Wildlife Refuge at the boat ramp. Well, my boat motor pulley went out on that boat. I'm in that picture right now. Well, my son went back to the house to get a pulley because we had an extra one. Well, he was gone. Up on that boat ramp, I can hear somebody walking back and forth, and they're walking. You can hear the movement of their legs, and you can tell they're legs, human legs or something. And they kept moving back and forth. Well, of course, I got out my pew-pew, and I told them, I said, y'all just need to leave me alone and go on. But I don't know why, but I feel like that they're kind of like telepathic in a little bit. Well, about a year later, a guy showed up in my town that was researching Bigfoot, and he asked anybody had any stories in our area. So me and my son, we hooked up with him over at Tishomingo Wildlife Refuge. He had a very expensive drone, and that went up, and he played some sounds, some calls. And one of the last calls, it sounded more like Bigfoot, but I forget what that gentleman said that was the actual sound on the recording. But the next thing I know, that when he played that sound box, we started hearing knocks, and I mean knocks, on the woods. They are there at Tishomingo, and what I think they do, they migrate from Tishomingo because they've been in southern eastern Oklahoma, and they move over to Broken Bow, and they've got a pattern when they move up. But see, if you've researched Tishomingo Wildlife Refuge, they shut that place down a certain time of year. They do every year. they're safe there.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that's just north of Lake Texoma, which I've gotten plenty of reports around that lake and like around Kingston as well.
Yep.
Yeah, that whole area is nuts. There's a crazy area called Fob Bottom State Hunting Area, which is
Yep.
down on the Oklahoma-Texas line. That's a
Blue
wild
River.
area too. Yeah.
Blue
Yeah.
River. And see, another thing is, and I don't mean to interrupt you because my device is fixing to go. I had a sheriff that I bought my place from, and he told me that him and his partner seen Bigfoot out of Tishomingo. And I told him, I said, "Oh, you're a liar." I told him through his place, "You're a liar. I've been hunting all my life." Well, after what I seen, I had to go back and apologize what I heard. And I know what I heard. That was Bigfoot.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's incredible. If you ever want to pass on my email to anyone, including that sheriff, feel free to do that. It's bigfootsociety@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to him if you ever talk to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. I'll pass that along. And thank you for allowing me to speak and come up in your box.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for coming up.
You have a good night.
All right. We got all sorts of people hanging out. Hey, just call me Carlos. This is Jeremiah. How's it going, man?
It's going great. So, top of the list here. I stay in Oregon, and I'd say probably about if you don't mind me just jumping into a story here.
I'd say go for it, man.
Absolutely. So I'd say about end of winter last year, I was out camping with two of my friends and their kid, and we're out in the woods in Applegate in Oregon, which is, fairly close to the border down here. And we had a quite interesting series of events happen over the 3 nights that we were there. The first night, just a little bit of wildlife, nothing too crazy or anything like that. But then the second night rolls around, and we have a full-on UFO sighting. And we're sitting around the fire, we're hanging out, and we look up, and there's this bright green light in the sky. And my buddy's looking at it, and he's watching it, and he's like, "Dude, I think that's for sure not a star, right? It's kind of like, it's like moving up and down and kind of like doing little circles and just not behaving, like a star or planet would." So we're sitting here just watching this thing for probably a good half hour, 45 minutes. And we start trying to, communicate with it. Like, "Hey, if you can see us and can hear us and, have intelligence, can you do like a very clear, little left to right movement?" And it gave us a very clear response. So we started asking a little bit more detailed questions, but still with kind of a yes or no answer, for like up and down for yes or left and right for no. And it was just a breathtaking experience. At one point, we sat here just staring at it, not really asking it for anything, but as I was staring into this light, it felt like I could feel it looking back at me. And it was like just this warmth and compassion just like filled my entire body, like starting from my chest. And I was just like, I started like vibrating, like I just, like, so much energy was just washing over me, kind of thing. And this is night 2 of this crazy experience of this, short little weekend camping trip. So we're 2 of us are sitting here, wigging over this light, and my buddy's girlfriend who was with us, she wasn't so sure about it. She was like, "Oh, I've seen weird stuff in the sky before, and you always discounted it and said, oh, it's probably a drone or something." So she kind of, she was having a little bit of an attitude about it, because she felt kind of left out, because he finally is seeing something and, having someone to share it with. And I felt, she felt kind of a type of way about that not going how it went before for them. Either way, so the two of us sitting here observing this thing was just a beautiful experience. We end up going to sleep that night, and I am having communication with with things that I can't necessarily see, but like I can feel, like that I know that are there. If that makes any sense.
Yep.
So I have this crazy night, you know, I'm by myself in my tent, and I'm having these conversations with beings that I cannot see, but I know are communicating back with me. And we wake up on the third day, and I come out to, you know, you wake up, come out of the tent, everybody kind of groggy, slow moving in the morning, and directly in front of the front door of my car is this like full handful of very matted, long white scruff. Like, it looked as though, and I still have it right now. I can actually, if you would like, I could pull a camera in a moment, but this large white tuft of fur, and there was like one little tuft that was over on the other side of the camp, like it had blown away or something like that. But this large tuft just placed directly in front of my driver's side door, and I was like, oh my god, like what possibly could have left this giant chunk of fur? So I'm gonna run inside here really fast.
Okay.
I'm gonna get a camera on this.
How long ago did you say this was that you got this?
This was about 6 months ago, I would say.
Okay.
Beginning or end, I think, of last winter, because it was, you know, fairly cold out. Here we go.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Okay, so these little tufts were kind of just around the site, like they had blown away, but they're very very tangible. They're very together. You know what I mean? Like if I try to pull it apart, it's very, very much still taut. Like it's very matted. You know, very, very.
Yeah, that's wild.
Very matted. But then the chunk that was left by my door almost looks like inside of there, like it's as if it literally just grabbed a chunk of fluff off of its hip and just ripped it off and just set it on the ground next to my door. And it was. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, can you reach out to me through my email? There's a DNA project going on right now at North Carolina State where you can send in stuff.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you'd be curious about doing that, but now is a good time to do that and doesn't cost you anything.
No, absolutely. I have wanted to get a hold of somebody with something like that, just to try to verify it for, you know, kind of for myself, but for all intents and purposes, like we don't really have, you know, like a big wolf culture in the area, at least not white, you know what I mean? And so kind of one of the craziest things about coming back and sharing this experience with my significant other was coming home to find out that, you know, there are stories of one white Sasquatch or one white Bigfoot or Yeti that lives in these mountains, and that this one white Sasquatch is, you know, just one of the most, you know, well-known, talked about kind of things that I had never necessarily heard about before. But I think kind of just being, you know, really well connected with nature for those couple of days and doing a lot of deep meditation and growth in those couple of days, because it was absolutely a crazy experience. And for this to be what I woke up to on the first, or on the third day of that, you know, whole crazy trip was just, it's just profound.
That's incredible. Was it Applegate or Applegate Lake area that you were in?
Applegate Lake area. Yeah.
Okay. You want to hear something wild?
Absolutely.
You might actually know about it already. Have you ever heard of the Bigfoot trap?
I have not.
Okay. So back, I believe in the 70s or 80s, there was a Bigfoot trap that was created, and now it's been left there as like a tourist thing. But if you search for Applegate, Oregon Bigfoot trap, you can find photos of it, and it's going to blow your mind. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
you were in
My
that
girlfriend's over
same
here giving me the
area.
big,
Yeah.
yeah. My girlfriend's over here giving me the big thumbs up, like, no, really.
Oh
But
man,
yeah,
this is
just
incredible. Yeah, please reach out to me. It's bigfootsociety@gmail.com. We can get you set up with the link to contact that guy. Man, thank you so much for coming up. And yeah, we should I think we can continue this conversation. Yeah, reach out and we'll get you some info, man. But that is wild.
absolutely. Absolutely. I was so grateful to be able to share that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming up, dude.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm gonna reach out to Queen Lee, see if Queen wants to come up to share what her father and grandpa experienced. If not, feel free to pass on. Oh, here we go. Hey, Queen, thanks for coming up and chatting.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Cool. All right. So what did your father and grandfather experience?
Well, it was during hunting season, and it was early in the morning. My father stated it was like around, because they have to drive there, like they take off around, because they're from Central Valley, so they have to. It's like a maybe 2.5, 3 hours drive to Monterey, so they would leave early. But my father and my grandpa got there around like 5, 6 in the morning. They were going through these little trails with my grandfather's new Tundra, my uncle, and then just purchased for him. And he stated they took off walking from the car steeper into the forest, and they saw a Bigfoot. First of all, they didn't know it was a Bigfoot, but they noticed that it was kind of foggy and dense, so they had to go down further. But they saw this creature, this like bear creature, standing up, scratching his shoulder, like he was rubbing his shoulders on a pine tree. And then they did know they had this stinky smell. Like they have this, he couldn't describe the smell. He just said it was worse than a skunk smell. And they assumed they knew what it is because they always heard like stuff about Bigfoot back in the days. Because my grandpa, he was a veteran from Vietnam, a secret war, so he was familiar with the smell. And my grandpa, he's old, so they encountered it, but they didn't know what it is, and they went get closer, and they saw they kind of spooked out because they wasn't sure if it was a bear or not. So, but then they kind of did the signal to each other, like kind of walk back slowly. But then I guess my dad said my grandpa stepped on one of this little tree, and it made that little the breaking sound of the twig. Yeah. And it turned around, and my father saw it look at them, and then it just kind of got up and walked forward like nothing happened, and it just disappeared in a fog. So yeah, that's what my father said to us. My grandpa and my father kind of freaked out. They got back in the car, and they just came back home. So,
oh man, wow.
Ever since that, my father loves hunting. And ever since then, my father and my grandpa stopped hunting because they encountered that. And I think it traumatized my father and my grandpa because it took him almost a decade. And then once my brother and my brother, they were old enough to go hunting, he would go hunting with them, but then he would just stay close close to the car, he wouldn't go in the forest. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he did encounter it 'cause that's what he said. Maybe he was making a story, but knowing how my father loves hunting, I think he did see something, and he did tell before he passed away 3 years ago. He did tell me. I asked him again about the story. He told me he actually had two encounters. He had that encounter with my grandfather, and one time they went hunting. Before that encounter, they went hunting. They saw a big hairy creature cross the road that they were going hunting in. So I was just like, wow. So yeah, but before he passed away, he told me the story again. So that was 3 years ago, right before COVID hit, and that stayed with me forever.
Wow. Thank you
So that's the
for
story.
sharing that with us as well. And that's in the Monterey area,
You're
as
welcome.
you said?
Yeah. I'm not familiar with what zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 is, but it's like there, I guess my father said it was in Monterey zone area 3.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure that's their Big Sur, but they call those zone, I don't know, I guess they narrow it for like hunting areas.
I'll have to look it up.
So yeah, so that's what I'm assuming. Yeah.
Well, Queen, thank you for coming up and for sharing about that area. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You have a good day.
Hey, Lemon Drop, feel free to share what you've been experiencing down the Green Swamp.
All right. So when I was a teenager, my stepdad, he was a hunter and fisherman, and we would always go in the Green Swamp to go fishing at this one spot. And one day we brought our bikes with us, and we're just out about, and I'm looking through the tree line as I'm going, and all of a sudden I see like this super huge thing just walking, and I stopped and I looked, and it literally turned and looked at me, and then it just kept walking.
How long do you think you were able to look at it for?
We made eye contact for quite a bit. I want to say for at least a good minute, because I was like, am I seeing what I really think I see? And then by that time, he was already gone.
That's incredible. Do you remember any details from having eye contact for that long?
Yeah, so he was probably like 8, and of course, the best way I can describe him is like Chewbacca, long brown hair. He didn't really seem mean or like any type of aggression. He was really nice and literally just kept walking like, oh, hey, it's just a human. Okay, I'm going to be on my way. Like, oh, it's just a kid, nobody's going to believe them.
Was the entire face covered with hair?
Yes.
Okay.
He was hairy all over. I did open up once to one of my family members, and they were telling me, because my of the Appalachia area, and my grandma was a little girl. She was outside, and she saw Bigfoot walk over a barbed wire fence, and some of its hair got caught on, and someone in my family supposedly has that chunk of hair somewhere.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. How cool is that? The Green Swamp is interesting because it's still a very active area, even to this day. A lot of people will still go down there and have experiences related to Bigfoot, but also to other sometimes paranormal things as well, orbs, things like that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences down in the Green Swamp. Voices where no one's around you, to like feeling like you're being watched.
That is very strange. How often do you go in there?
We used to go in there all the time. We used to hunt all the time and fish down in there.
The eyes, did they have any whites in them, or was it just a fully colored
There was a
eye?
little bit.
Okay.
It was a little bit of white, but the fur kind of like took that over, where you could see them, but you know how when you're looking at a dog, how there's like around the eye and you can't see the whole eye, but you can see a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. Lemon, thank you for coming up. If you ever experience anything else when you're going in there in the future, feel free to reach out to me. My email's up there on the screen, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Yeah.
And
Thank
I
you,
will
though.
also follow you too.
Perfect. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Hey, Cotton Top. Welcome to the stage. You are welcome to share what you've experienced.
I first seen one of these beings about 2 years ago, up about 20 miles from Houghton Lake. And this being stepped out from behind a tree, less than 30 yards away from me. My son and I and my grandson were traveling down the road, and I had seen these programs about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and I realized as a hunter, I've been a hunter and outdoorsman my whole life. And once seeing these programs, I knew that this was a real subject, and I talked to my son about it, and he wasn't into it, and occasionally he would poke fun of me about it. Well, we were traveling up north, and he sees all these stick structures that I've showed him in videos, and he goes, "Hey, look, Dad, Bigfoot," and he laughed. Well, I got to looking, and sure enough, I was seeing a lot of tree structures, tree breaks, teepees, star structures. I mean, it was like, to me, it looked like a whole community of these things got together and just built a whole village of tree structures. And I was like, they're here for sure, I'm thinking to myself. So I started watching close, and, we're driving down the road. In about 15 minutes, I look, and this Bigfoot stepped out from behind a tree and showed himself to me, about 7, 8 feet tall, solid black shiny hair, like it was very well groomed, but he communicated with me telepathically. And that was a mind-blowing introduction to these beings. And in this communication, he had showed me where a visual, like put in my mind a visual where he came from, and I could see the clouds and the mountains and different things like that. But he had told me that he was the youngest of his clan or his tribe, and I can't remember which word he used on that or for that, because I was taking all this in and still trying to, shuffle everything together, being with my son, my grandson, and here's this being communicating with me. And it shook me. I mean, it really shook me bad. So I didn't say nothing to my son or my grandson, but I took this in. And ever since that time, once you've probably heard this saying often, that once you see them, they know that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And since that time, I started having lots and lots of dealings with these beings. Between walking on my deck, orbs, I've been an avid hunter and an outdoorsman my whole life. I don't know, there's very few men out there that have experienced more in the outdoors than I have. I spent my whole life out in the outdoors. Well, I'll give you some of the latest experiences. This last deer season, I went out hunting. I went to a buddy of mine. Well, first I went down to the southern lower Michigan. I've hunted there for over 50 years. And we had a motorhome on the property. And as we pulled in there, parked, got set up, during the night, it snowed like 3 or 4 inches. Well, we got up before daylight. It's barely starting to break daylight. We get our gear on. We go outside, get our weapons loaded, and 20 yards from the motorhome, I find these big footprints in the ground. These footprints are over 20 inches long, over 15 inches wide at the toes. This track had like splayed toes. You got the regular Bigfoot track, but then other tracks, they got the splayed toes.
I've seen that in Oregon, yeah.
Yeah. Well, At the splayed part, it was 15 inches wide.
Okay.
Well, these tracks went 4 inches deep into the ground. I stomped on that ground as hard as I could stomp, and the snow was still in the track. Where he went into the soil was 4 inches deep. And I didn't make a mark on it. Well, I followed the track for like 30 yards. And every step he sunk in 4 inches deep, and he kicked up dirt on top of the snow every step. And this track went 300 yards across a field. And, my main goal was to take my grandson deer hunting and, for him to get a deer and have a great time. So I left off of that trackway and took my grandson hunting. And I was thinking, it's not, whatever this being is with a track that big has got to be at least 12 feet tall and over 1,000 pounds. And I was thinking that, I really don't want to be here with my grandson. If something happens, it's not good. So anyway, we left that area and I went to a buddy of mine's place. I figured I'll hunt on some private land of a friend of mine that we've hunted for over 30 years. So I was trying to get there before dark, but I didn't, the traffic and everything. And I get up there and we go out to his property to open up the blinds. They were tower blinds, like 15, 18 feet up in the air. And we go open the one that I usually hunt out of, get it ready. And we go to my buddy's blind. And within 20 feet from us, we get this growl. You've heard this a million times too, the growl, howl, and this roar. And it's less than 20 feet from me in the thick brush. And my buddy, which we're both been hunters for over 50 years, he's like, Ed, he goes, what was that? I said, I don't know. But, I had my firearm on me, and I reached, and as soon as this happened, I grabbed the handle of my firearm because this being this close, I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's very unusual. And then it starts to sound like a coyote pack. Then to the left, it starts to sound like an owl. And then further to the left, it sounds like another growl howl. We were surrounded by these beings. Well, my buddy waited to come down out of that ground blind. He finally came down. We left, went back to the house. Well, the next day I was hunting. I'm up in that tower blind, and this great big tree gets pushed down. Full-grown tree. You could hear it. Boom! I mean, you could hear it hit the ground. And I was like, well, I haven't heard that a lot over the years of hunting, of a full-grown tree hitting the ground. Well, 5 minutes later, another tree did the exact same thing. Then about 5 minutes later, a great big rock comes flying through the treetops at a very high rate of speed. You can hear it through the treetops, and the rock hits the ground next to the tower blind. Then the next morning, I'm out there before daylight, and I could hear this being off at a distance on a real tall hilltop just howl across the whole county. It sounded like it went across the whole county. And I was like, man, that is so majestic. But I've had so many encounters with these beings since the time that I've seen it. And it seems like that once they know that they're there, they continually reveal themselves to you.
I would agree 100%. Are they still trying to communicate to you, do you think?
Yeah, the majority of the time when I go into the woods, they will. And there's times that I've been in like metro parks, and I look around and I see all the thick brush and all that, and I'm thinking, boy, I bet they're here. And they will literally mind speak to me and tell me we're here. And I will, in my mind, I will say, I know you are. But I don't make it a point to try to communicate with them.
Why is that?
Well, because it's an unknown field. For a long time, I've wondered what and who these beings are and how do they have all these abilities. And now I realize that they are doing the will of God by God allowing them to fulfill the wrath of God. And if you read in Revelation, it talks about that in the last days that these beings will come up from under the earth and that they will take out a third of mankind. And I think that that's who these beings are.
It's very interesting. To be honest, that's a new viewpoint, but that is a very interesting viewpoint for sure.
And, I also believe that they are the watchers because,
Okay.
yeah, they see everything that's going on. You know how people say, you don't have, or if you're going, all these researchers that are going out to find these beings, they say, well, just tell them what your intentions are. And they also, they will all the researchers will say that, they know if you're a good person. They know if you have a good heart. And you have to ask yourself, well, how do they know? And how can they actually communicate with you telepathically? You know, before I seen that being, I believed that the only one that could do that was God. You know, because I've had a relationship with God, and there's many times that God has revealed things to me. I had no idea that there was anybody else that, or any other being that could do that. I didn't realize that these beings could do that. So, and another thing, a lot of times they'll leave me gifts, mostly feathers. There was a time I was traveling into North Carolina, and my buddy and I and my grandson, and we were traveling to North Carolina, and we were going. Are you familiar with the Route 129?
No, I'm not super familiar with the routes in that area.
Yeah, well,
I can look it up though.
Yeah, well, that's the route that all the motorcycles take.
Okay.
That do the windy road, and they got a shop or a meeting place there with all the motorcycle parts screwed into the trees where people didn't make it. You know, they go down a windy road and go off a mountain. So all these trees are just covered in motorcycle parts. I forget the name of what they called it. They got a name for it. I'll try to think of it. But anyway, I was traveling that route. I've traveled that route for 20 years. My buddy that lived there in North Carolina, we would hike 10 miles a day off trail. With off trail is, 10 miles off trail is, you're really doing something. I mean, it's tough. You can hike an hour up a mountain, not even see the top. But anyway, we're traveling down this highway, and there's a copperhead in the road. And we're in that motorhome again. We pull over just to check it out. Well, as soon as I go to step out of the motorhome, here's this feather laying on the ground right where I stepped out. And at mind speak again, it was like, this is for you. Well, I picked the feather up and check out the copperhead in the road and get back in. But, that's probably happened 20 times where they leave me feathers.
Oh, wow. That's extremely interesting.
Well, yeah, you wonder why they do that.
It's one of those things where when you start going down the that trail, there's some really, really interesting things that come up where there's not a lot of answers, and you kind of figure it out as you go along, right?
Right.
But that cotton top, I feel like I could talk with you forever. But I would say if you continue to experience stuff, reach out to my email there, please, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And I would love to continue our conversation at a later time.
Okay. Well, there's, that's just scraping the surface.
I know.
There's so much I've been through. I just can't think of it all at one time, but, I'm in my 60s, so I've been around the block a few times.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got a lot of wisdom. So yeah, definitely. take some time maybe to write down some of the other things, and you can always reach out and we can chat at a later time too.
All right, anytime.
All right.
It's
Thank
good
you, sir.
talking to you.
All right, we are rocking and rolling. Hey, Big Fish, this is Jeremiah. Feel free to share what you've experienced with us, sir.
Okay, it was about, I would say 97 or 98. I do a lot of deer hunting, like old boy was talking earlier. I've been in the woods a long time. I'm 61 years old, and I've hunted since I was a kid. And I've never really had a lot of experiences, but I did this one time. I was over outside of Stroud, Chandler, Davenport area, over there off Interstate 44. I was hunting this section of land that I had permission to hunt on, and Dry Creek runs through there. That hooks into Deep Fork that runs all the way over here to Lake Eufaula. And it's wild, woolly, it's got hogs, it's got deer, cats, you name it, everything. So I was in there hunting one evening, and I'm walking, it's called Gobbler's Knob, northwest of Davenport, Oklahoma. And I'm walking along this big hillside, and it's got cedar trees and blackjack, big oak trees, you know, it's woods. And dude, I heard something hit the ground. It was heavy. And this guy had told me I could hunt in there, but not till a certain time of the year because he had cows in there. So he got the cows out there, and he called me and he said, "Hey man, you're good to go." And I said, "Okay." So I was in there deer hunting, and something hit the ground heavy, and it busted a big tree limb. I don't know what it was, but there wasn't no cows in there. So I don't know, to this day, I was the one that told you that I had that big rock chunked at me too in an episode a while back. I said a cantaloupe-sized rock.
Yep.
And I mean, those two things that I've had happen to me, I'm skeptic because I ain't laid eyes on one. But I've had things happen in the woods that I'm like, dang, I'm not by myself. You know, a couple times, because I always got my deer hunting spots from calling coyotes and things like that. That's how I worked, and to get my hunting spots. They say, "How much you charge?" I'm like, "Oh, I just let me take a deer come wintertime." They're like, "Oh, okay, that's not a problem." And those two times, and both of those times was on that same section, the rock throwing deal.
Okay.
And something that hit the ground real hard like that, and it went off down the side of that hill and busted through them trees. And I even ran down after that. It was 100, 150 yards up on the side of that hill, and I was trucking it. I'm 6'5", 200 pounds, and I was running down that hill with my rifle up on my shoulder, and I never saw nothing. Whatever it was, they hit the ground and took off. It was big. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't a hog. It didn't squall. It didn't bawl or nothing. And you can check in some of the Bigfoot websites, the sightings that they've had on Highway 99 there at the Deep Fork River and stuff. There's been a few sightings back in, I think it was 80, 88 or something like that. And then another one in 92 or 93 or something. I can't remember. But that's all I got, man. I mean, I was the one that asked you about that group here in Oklahoma too, because I'd like to get hooked up with some guys that do some research.
Yes, yes, yep, exactly. And man, they're the No Bro. I think did I mention the No Bro
Yes, no,
guys last
bro,
time,
that's
right?
who it
Yeah, they're
was.
good. Yep,
Yeah,
yep. But really, I think it's you just got to go to like one of those there's also there's a Bigfoot museum down there in the southeast, I
yeah,
think.
Tahlequah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that would be a good place to get some connections too. But I think No Bro is probably your best bet to try to get connections to maybe um, start going out there
Yeah.
with people. I think, man, it sounds like if you keep doing what you're doing, you're gonna run into something someday. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hunt a lot by myself.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
and you know, a couple times even over there in that same area, I heard some what I thought was wood knocks, but there
Mhm.
is some civilized people around there. It ain't
Sure.
completely just wide open range. You know what I'm talking about? So
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
yeah. So there is some farmers and stuff living around there, and you'd always be walking and you'd hear something knock or something like that, and you're like, "Oh, that's so and so over there working on his tractor or something," you know.
Oh yeah.
You just, and the older I've gotten, I've looked back on those two things. I was in my 40s back when that happened, and I'm like, man, that was really weird. You know, that was something. That was something because
You never know. Yeah.
there was no cows in there. I know there
Hmm.
wasn't cows in there. And then the cantaloupe-sized rock that day that got chunked from something that busted through the trees, I was like, wow. So anyway, that's my story.
Well, Big Fish, thank you for sharing that other part of what you experienced, and I appreciate you coming up. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.